all over again now. So. Those of you who haven't been here before, we're taping everything. Actually streaming it, right? Good.
Whatever that means.
So, we're going back to spiritual basics. And every time I get off track, I go, oh my goodness, what's going on? And this book, called the Bible, tells us that we're created in the image after likeness of God. Everybody? And it says it in Genesis 1. So I'm going to go back to Genesis 1. Unfortunately, I need glasses, so I'll put my glasses on. Here they are. I'm finding them.
Fortunately, you have glasses.
I have. I don't need them. We're going to need to change our language, right? So anyway, Genesis 1:27. It says, well, I'll go to 26. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over everything, fish of the sea, etc. And verse 27, so God created man in his own image, and that's what it says. So, God by definition, according to the Bible, is what? Spirit. So we were created spiritually. Everybody there? That's what it says. Okay? Then, now there's another part of the story which is over in Genesis 2. And it says it again, that God created man again. And it says here, let's see. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And it says in, let's see, I'm looking here. Okay, so 1, God in verse 2, okay, on over into verse 7, and the Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground. Now, do you hear the difference between the word created and formed? It's a very significant difference, and it's a difference that is addressed in the Course of Miracles and in the Course of Love and some other works. It says, and God created man in his own image. And creation is a spiritual thing. Okay? Making or forming is a physical thing. So we were created as a spiritual being, and then a form was made out of the dust of the ground. And anybody agree? If you do a analysis on our body components, it's the same thing as the ground, the dust. And every time they do it, they come up with the same idea. As a matter of fact, what are we, 60% water or something like that? So we are all the elements of the physical earth housed in spirit. So you see the difference. So there is really a difference. And that difference is what we need to address and understand. So we're talking a spiritual self and a physical self. Now, this week, the whole John 1:1 was going in my head. Okay, it really was. It was kind of... what happens is I ask for words to convey pictures that give us the story. And make the story simple to take it in, and also simple and let's call it non-controversial. And so John kept coming to me, John 1:1, and it's a rather famous verse because it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the Word what? And I was thinking about that, and back in the original Greek, it's not the Word, it's the Logos, and Logos, and Logos generally means the creative Word. So, Jesus or God spoke our world into awareness through his words, yes? So we've been created in that image, so what can we do? Because it says, that which I do, ye shall do, and even greater things. So you start putting that together, and I started realizing we have a code. So the Logos, the creative code that was originally part of who we are in our spiritual self, is still there. Anybody familiar with DNA? Mm-hmm. DNA is what? It's a code that helps us do and act out in the physical world. It gives us the color of our hair, color of our eyes. It gives us how we walk. It gives us whether we gain weight or lose weight. It has all those things in it. It also has in our DNA how we act in life. And it's really fascinating to me that from the beginning we had a DNA code that's perfect. And one of the principles in unity is that we are created in the image after God, so we are perfect, but we sure as heck don't look like it. So what happened? And that's where I have been still looking at, well, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How did we get to this mess out there politically and everything else? And there had to be a direct cause. So if you really look at what it says is we created as spiritual beings. We had an original code within us that gave us everything we could ever need. Already in our DNA, which was part of it. Now, science tells us that we have, 24 strands of DNA? And they've only been identified, I think, 2. So they call the rest of it what? Junk DNA. How in the world can you take an item as valuable as our DNA code and call it junk? Just because you don't know what's there. So maybe all that stuff is there and we haven't activated it. Interesting thought, huh? So, now epigenetics, and see, science is now starting to layer this stuff in. We were told for years that you can't change your DNA, and then epigenetics comes along and says you can change your DNA. Your thinking changes your DNA, and if you have an extreme trauma thought, it's stored internally within and becomes part of your DNA, or if you have an extreme bliss type thing, that's integrated into who you are, and then it becomes part of your genes and it's passed on to your progeny. Bible says to the 6th and 7th generation. Science is now saying to the 6th and 7th generation. So I got to deal with 7 great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers back and what they went through. So here I am today. Okay, I am a perfect child of God. And that's the truth. That's when we were talking earlier. I and the Father are one is the truth. That's the great truth, spiritual truth. I am one with Spirit, and you are one with Spirit. And that's who we are. And we have that original gene of God there. The DNA code's all there. Maybe it's part of that junk DNA. I hate to call it God junk, but anyway. So you understand that we don't know yet. Is it possible? All I'm saying is a possibility that all of that stuff is the stuff we have been allowed for the interaction of life around us to affect us. So we got to deal with 6 and 7 generations of upsets from forebears, okay? Do you realize what some of our ancestors have gone through? Some of us have been through discrimination, been through fires and tribulations, been through famine. Wars. How many wars have been fought in the last 7 generations? How much upset has there been? How much turmoil? How much discrimination? If you look at the racial issues, how much of everything has occurred in all the different populations in the United States and from the world which we are part of. It's part of your ancestry. So I got to deal with all that, okay? And I also have to deal with cultural activities. I don't know about you, I grew up in a house where I had to eat everything on my plate. Agreed? And if you didn't, the kids in China are going to starve. Can you imagine an imprint like that? So you're automatically creating starving kids in China for your DNA beliefs. Okay, and on and on and on. You take different cultures. We're dealing with racial issues, cultural issues, all kinds of things that have come down from 6 and 7 generations of programming. And then we've got the world around us right now that we have to deal with. So if I believe life's a struggle, what do I have to have it come into my life to prove that that's correct? Struggle. So then I got to deal with struggle, which implants more DNA for my kids. So it's, if you really take a look at it, it's almost impossible. Everybody got it? But that's the truth. That's what I believe. That's what I see. But deep within us is that core of perfection, of joy, of happiness. It's called being in the flow. And so when we were doing meditation earlier, I wanted you to float in the void of nothingness. Now, we're learning this centering prayer and quiet, silent meditation is a reconnection to spirit. So, the world has noise around us. Anybody familiar with noise? Okay. You can't help it. I went to the movies yesterday and saw, what did I see? A Wrinkle in Time, which, by the way, is very interesting. But anyway, and I was annoyed because I could hear the noise from the theater next to us. But what triggered that annoyance? Do you see? We're programmed with all. We don't even know what's going on. So the world around us is noisy to keep us distracted from who we really are. So, I hope you get the picture of here we are, floating in space with all this programming that we took in, don't know we took in, but yet deep within that core is perfection, is joy, and is happiness. So the question is, how do we get back? How do we get back there? How do we get back into the Garden of Eden, if you will, which is a metaphor. So that's what we're about here, is creating a community of folks that have learned to overcome and now are operating in the flow of life. So life just occurs and unfolds perfectly around us. So everybody ready? Why not? In other words, we keep being sold that there's a problem by the outside world. And the TV does a great job at it. Newspapers, I have to read the newspaper every morning. Amanda will tell you, I go out, it's out in front, but I do, that's part of my structure. So we all have these issues that we keep rehashing where we are. And when something bad happens, we say, oh yeah, that's just the way it is. So you see where we are, and what we are talking about on the spiritual path is returning to the Father-Mother. And I use the term Father-Mother on purpose because it's a nurturing, loving entity, or if you will, or spirit that cradles us and takes care of us. So far I need to get back on script, okay? Because I start seeing these things, and I was really aware, all of a sudden the DNA is the original code. And there's a code within us that's perfect, which is what we were created with. And the difference between creation and form is just like, wow, look at that. Because form is what we do in our world here. Spirit creates out of nothing, or out of the ethers. So, awakening is where awareness returning to its original DNA. I'll say it again. Awakening, or becoming aware of who I am, is awareness returning to who I really am at the DNA code level. And the question is, how do I access it? The codes have been overwritten through the centuries of our programming. See, in other words, if you take the example I usually use is, it's like you take, excuse me for being inelegant, everybody ready? Madeline doesn't want me to go there. But it's like taking horse manure, if I can use that metaphor, and coating it with chocolate. And we keep adding layers to the chocolate, but still inside it's horse manure. Everybody okay? Yeah. Now, the idea is, within you is a little pellet way in the beginning that if we can reach it, overcomes everything. So it's a matter of rewriting the script in the DNA, and if we stay in the world, we keep rewriting the same DNA over and over again. So we have to get over here into the truth, or the spiritual truth, that I am a child of God, and stay there. And how do we stay there? See, we have to sneak up on it. Because we have all this mass of DNA overwritten incorrectly, and it takes time to work with it. Changing neuron structures, changing ideas, creating new bodies. My mind's going 100 miles an hour. And it's awakening to who we really are. Okay? Now, we live in a world of our own creation. The ego's making. In other words, the ego has made our world that we're existing in, and there's a better world, a spiritual world, if you will, where everything works. I would like to do something. We're going to go, this is really back to basics, okay? So, where did I put it? It left. Oh, here they are. I want, if you would, please, if you would pass them down, please. There's another one. If you would pass them down. If you would pass them down, please. And I want you, when you get yours, to turn to the back page. Just turn to the back. Okay? And we're going to look at the 5 unity principles. Okay? If you would pass that over. Thank you. Hello. Okay, here we are. Now, I know everybody knows these, but remember back to basics? Anybody agree we have a tendency to forget? Thank you. So, this is basics. So, the original code is still there. So, down here it says Unity 5 basic principles. First principle. Would somebody go ahead and read that for me?
God is the source and creator of all. There is no other enduring power. God is good and present everywhere.
Okay, so God is good and present everywhere, which means there isn't anything other than God. Now, some people say, well, there's evil. Okay, I got it. However, we forget it's like light. Okay, you see the lights up there? Okay, those lights are on, creating an energy we call light. Everybody there? Is there an energy called darkness? No, there's just lack of light. So when I turn that light off, it goes dark. Hello. Heat is exactly the same way. There's either heat or absence of heat. There's no energy called cold. There's only energy called heat. And cold is the absence of heat. Everybody there? So there's either God or not God. And who has the choice to be either in God or not God? We as individuals. So when we are consciously not God, what happens? Things other than God occur in our life. And who chose it? See, that's a basic truth. It's an understanding, and you can handle, to get all involved in theory and everything else, but the truth is, I'm either in God or not in God. Okay? So what's going on? Next one. Somebody read number 2.
We are spiritual beings.
Thank you.
Created in God's image. The Spirit of God lives within each person. Therefore, all people are inherently good.
Okay, we are spiritual beings. Thank you. So, in our root, in our really creative self, who are we? God expressing itself. Okay? And who has the choice to channel that or not channel it? So we're right back to our individual choices. Let's go on. Number 3.
We create our life experiences through our way of thinking.
Okay, thank you. So part of the original DNA was thoughts create. So thoughts take the essence of the universe and bring into materialization that which our thoughts are thinking. Which is how God did it in our original Genesis. Okay? And we are expressions of God, so we are God expressing itself through our thinking. So everything in our life is what? God and of our own creation, no matter what it looks like. Don't like that one sometimes. Especially when it doesn't look good, okay? Then, number 4. Somebody else.
There is power in affirmative prayer, which we believe increases our awareness of God.
Thank you. Now, affirmative prayer is knowing something has occurred as I pray. There is no evocative prayer. Evocative prayer is, please heal Aunt Mary's hangnail. Or please bring me a chair to sit in. Or some form of evocation. In other words, bring it in. No. It's already done if you think it because you're a child of God. And so if it's not occurring, it means our thinking is holding it out. So if we give thanks, maybe it'll be released and it'll show up for us. Right now, folks, it's like people ask, when are we going to break ground for our church? I don't know. And we need, what, $1.1 million, 1.2, $1 million, somewhere in there. Okay, and what this says is if we believe it can happen, it can happen. No, excuse me, it will happen. It is happening. Present tense, okay? You guys keep correcting my English, thank you. Let's get right into present tense. And present tense is affirmative prayer. And if you look at what Jesus did, he didn't ask for healing. He said, I give thanks for healing. He always gave thanks for things that occurred. When the fishes and loaves and fishes materialized, he gave thanks for it. He gave thanks for everything he did. He didn't ask for it. Please go into your Bibles and look at it. Especially those you don't believe me. Because if you read it, it's there. It's there. Now, number 5. Somebody?
Knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them.
Thank you, Cindy. Would you say it again, please?
Knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them.
So knowledge is not enough. Now, Course of Love, interestingly says, the time for learning has ended. The time for knowing is now here. So we got to stop trying to figure things out and reading and finding where the information is and just know it's already there, here. Actually here. So thank you. So the time for learning has ended. It says knowledge of these spiritual principles. Anybody know academics that know all this stuff? And their life is still a mess. But see, these things need to be incorporated into our daily life and practiced, if I can use that terminology, day after day after day. In other words, in centering prayer, we're saying 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon in quiet. Patrick's going to do another workshop on June 9th. June 9th, we're going to go through that again. And that requires a Saturday and 6 Tuesday nights in a row. But the idea is just taking 20 minutes morning and night in silence starts producing a benefit. And how do you know? You don't know because things slowly change. Okay? And reading something, I don't know, start reading the Bible. By the way, read the red letter edition where Jesus said it makes it easier. So there's all these things to do on a daily basis. And maybe it's good to hang around. I understand Barbara's doing a great class on Asking Is Given on Thursday afternoon, Thursday morning. We're still doing Joel Goldsmith's work. Wednesday, 10 o'clock, we're doing A Course of Love. Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, we're doing A Course of Miracles. Pat's doing Tuesday night, centering prayer. All these things are happening, but somebody has to be there to internalize what's happening, okay? Now, can you do it at home? Certainly you can. But there are benefits in being in a group. Anybody, do you feel better here today? I do. I just love it. I can't wait. I will tell you, if you notice I wander around, I try to keep my mind in what we're going to be doing. Like the prayer chaplains are doing. They're holding the space, knowing that God is here and that this service is divine in their own way. Okay? So we got to be doing things. So everybody got the basic ideas? So here we are. We were created in the image and after the likeness. We have a spiritual self deep within us that's there waiting for us to find it. And once we find it and learn how to incorporate it into our lives, lives change. And that's what we're looking for. I don't know about you, but that's what I'm looking for here as a group. Because we are community believers. And it's applying the beliefs and living the beliefs. Operating out of love. Anybody familiar with the idea of love? Because love is the language of spirit. And love is the language that says, I appreciate you, I love you, and I'm here to be at my best. Doesn't necessarily mean doing everything for everybody. What it means is being the best that I can in every situation. I do have to share. I'm really enjoying the heck out of practical metaphysics. By the way, these folks are still meeting on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. That's part of the work that's being done here. And this is Eric Butterworth's last book. If you don't know the story, they took one of his audio seminars and transcribed it and have written a book out of it. And this is said that the will to demonstrate is egocentric. So what that means is I used to do, and some of you know, I used to travel the world literally doing management seminars, doing rah-rah motivation, goal setting, all that type of thing. However, there's a higher level, that's why I'm here today. And it says here, demonstration comes easily if you're constantly faced with a problem. If you have stomach ulcers after stomach ulcers, headache after headache, physical challenge after physical challenge, your body is trying to tell you something. Do you get it? In other words, all these issues happen because of our thinking. Then it goes on and says, if you have one rebuff after another in your relationships with people, then the fact is something in life is trying to tell you something's wrong. So somehow your personality isn't working. Hello? Then it goes on and says, the need is not to find someone that is going to take away your loneliness, but to find what loneliness really means. Come to understand your relationship to the divine as one can never really be. Alone, if he understands, he is already all one. So it's learning to rely on the divine and knowing that myself inherently is the Christ. And that I already have everything I need. All I have to do is wait for it to unfold. And that's the trick sometimes, yes? Sometimes I wish it would happen quicker. Okay? There's a lot more here. It is the same with the job, with money, and all things we try to demonstrate. Again, understanding that we're not trying to work out something from without, but we're trying to release that divine flow which is already within us. So everything we need is already there. And it's just letting go and letting God. We talked about that last week, if you remember. And that means surrendering and giving it up and allowing life to unfold. The Christ is here. Okay? Everybody's waiting for Jesus to show up again. And the Christ is already here in you. By definition, absolutely 100%. So thank you for joining with us. Thank you for helping us create a community. There's a divine flow that is occurring. And it's kind of like I'm encouraging all of us to get on the train that's heading back to the Father. So thank you. I love you dearly. That's where we're going. Bye.
Thank you, Lord.